And we are on.
All right, hi everybody. Here with Ian Pedersen today.
Are we live on Facebook, Em?
Of Source CBD.
No, not on Facebook.
We're talking today about cannabinoids and CBD.
Hang on, Ian. If we
Sorry, Ian. Let's just make sure that we are live just to...
Perfect, making sure.
Awesome. Yes, we are live.
All right, perfect. We are live. All right,
Awesome.
everybody. Thank you for joining us. All right, broadcasting from Sedona, Arizona today. Beautiful Sedona, as you can see behind me.
What time is it there, Ian?
It is 6 p.m. here in Sedona. So it should be, what, 9 p.m. on the eastern seaboard, Midwest?
It is. It is 9 p.m. in this beautiful town of Barrie. And Emily is joining us from Innisfil, Ontario. Hello, everyone. We hope that you guys are fine. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really, really excited to be here with you. I don't know what you guys think. Maybe we should give a couple of minutes, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, to let everyone log in.
Perfect. All right, so we still got some people logging in online. Live Zoom call. If you haven't logged in, you can log in at our live Zoom call. That's sourcecbdhemp.com/sign up or sourcecbdhemp.com/live sessions. I believe that is the correct link.
That is the correct link.
We're doing a special call, live Zoom call and education today, directed at our local Valley consumers and friends at Mount Hope Foods, as well as we'll be broadcasting this, of course, nationally live to our audience abroad. So we're going to go ahead and wait for the viewers just to get started a little bit. We've got a few viewers joining us right now, I can see.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. All right. And again, we're joined with our friends to the north, Julio and Emily. They work closely with myself, and they're just amazing people, and we're happy to have them on board.
Like to think of ourselves as the Canadian branch of Source.
They are indeed.
Yes.
North American branch.
North American, yes.
Most North American branch, of which you can find our products, as you know, in many different countries, which is really cool. You can find us as far as Hong Kong, Cyprus in the EU, of course, Canada, our friends in the north. And we're actually just getting our products now in southern Mexico. We've had some distribution there. Which
wow.
Is really, and some really good traction with our friends over there on Alibaba, getting some interested people over in Australia. So we're going to have some products over there as well. So very excited for that. And I think we're going to go ahead and just slowly get started. Does it look like we've got ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'll be perfect. So some of you out there know me, but again, my name is Ian Pedersen. I'm the founder and CEO of Source CBD. And I've been working in the industry now for about 18 years. This journey has brought me far and wide across the country and in many different countries. And of course, working in education. I think my journey really started about 18 years ago with cannabis and with state licensed cannabis before state licensed facilities, working to do research. And fortunately, the policy has come around, as we all know, in many years. And now we're at a point where it seems to be mostly an accepted and widely known part of our lifestyle. And I'm really thankful for being part of that for many years. So my background in setting up, launching state licensed facilities, medical marijuana facilities specifically, cannabis cultivations, and of course consulting nationwide with extraction facilities has brought me basically to many different conclusions, and I'm going to discuss today in the industry. You may have seen me featured in magazines such as Dope Magazine, High Times Magazine. I'm also a columnist at Cannabis in Tech Today. You may have also seen me on CBS News, some of your national news, as well as across the states for our work with different wildlife parks. Specifically, our work initially started in research with humans, and then it's really transferred across to many different species, which is really amazing. Working, of course, with groups like the International Academy of Compounding Pharmacists, doing some accredited lectures, working with groups like the Compounders Group. And then, of course, working with health food stores, pharmacies, and educated professionals across the nation to come to a better understanding of how cannabinoids and how this cannabinoid research can really benefit us all. So I'm going to go ahead and start just a little bit. I'll go directly into a little bit of my my knowledge here on the subject, and I hope you'll spend a little time with me. And I appreciate you guys for taking the time to do so. So let's talk a little bit about CBD. Now, CBD is probably one of the most popular words that we've heard. I mean, it is probably been broadcasted. It has been talked about. It has been hopefully a part of your life. Cannabis as well has been something that's been widely supported by many people in the health field and for many years. And the research that's been done has been predominantly anecdotal, but we're really thankful to this point after the many years that I've had the opportunity to actually study and do these studies, and the research that we've been able to do as a whole in the community has brought us to some really amazing conclusions. So over the last 8 years, we've had a better understanding for these cannabinoids. Now, as we talk about cannabinoids and CBD again being the most prevalent, I think it's important to understand that there are so many other beneficial parts of this plant. Cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids, terpenoids, and plant-rich compounds that really equate to health and wellness. And I think that's really the most important thing that we can talk about today, is having the ability, especially in an environment that we're living in today, is having the ability to support our immune systems and to be able to support ourselves through these types of beneficial, natural plant nutrients. Now, with that being said, again, we're going to talk a little bit about cannabinoids. Now, we all have heard about CBD, which is cannabidiol, which is a very, very popular part of the plant and overall plant composition. However, there are many, many different beneficial cannabinoids in this plant that I think we're really missing out on. So when we talk about CBD, we really can't talk about CBD without talking about CBC, which is cannabichromene. And we can't talk about CBC without talking about other beneficial cannabinoids such as cannabidiol, which is CBN, and certainly other beneficial cannabinoids like CBV, cannabivarin. So when we look at these different types of cannabinoids, of course, the plant has many different beneficial cannabinoids. But it's really key to understand what these cannabinoids do. So we're going to talk a little bit further about that. Now, we understand with our research in CBD over the past many years that CBD seems to work for and support a host of different issues. Now, as we know, and we should talk about CBD, we shouldn't talk about it as a drug. We shouldn't talk about it as something that is really meant to prevent or cure diseases. What it is really here for, it is here for a health support. It's as simple as taking something that is as natural and beneficial that's been put on this green earth for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, and taking it and turning it into something that can help your body. Now, if we look at it as simply something that supplies ourselves with many different beneficial nutrients, minerals, vitamins, what these different things do that we consume, such as plants, vegetables, and fruits, they convert to proteins, which ultimately convert to cell health and cell growth. So that's the most important thing that we can talk about, is cell health. And that's what these cannabinoids really do to support in their each own individual way. So when we talk about these cannabinoids, again, starting with CBD, we understand that it has really supported a host of different issues such as anxiety, arthritis, fibromyalgia, neurological disorders. So moving from issues of neurological to arthritis, pain management, pain control, osteo issues. Really what we're talking about is a few different things. Is these CBD supporting a host of basically balancing and supporting your endocannabinoid system to be able to give you the beneficial nutrients that you need. And what they do is they simply, just as any other beneficial vitamin that you take in a natural whole plant form, converts into these beneficial nutrients that then convert into cell health, cell support, and basically beneficial and normal healthy cell growth. And I think that's what we really want to focus on today, is this normal healthy cell growth. We seem to be bombarded each day with pesticides in our foods, with chemicals, with many different things, chemicals that go to make our clothes, even the clothes that we wear. That's why you have to wash a shirt, for instance, after you purchase it, or the bedding that you buy. Many different things in our diets aren't naturally made. And with that being said, when we have these types of chemicals and pesticides bombarding our immune system, what it does is it really breaks it down and puts it in a position where it's not supported in a way, and it makes it a challenge for these cells to support themselves, to grow in a healthy way, to proliferate, and communicate. And that's what we're really going to be talking about through this entire discussion, is cell communication, cell health, and cell proliferation. And that's really what these cannabinoids support. So again, when we talk about CBD, we know what we have from our research, at least from a lot of our anecdotal research and from some of these support trials that we've done, we know what it does. However, we realize that there are many other beneficial cannabinoids in this plant composition that do help us in so many different ways. So let's talk a little bit more about those. So let's talk about CBC, Cbn, and Cbg. These other plant compounds are essentially in the plant to balance, to counteract, and to support your body in many different ways, as well as the terpenes. So imagine when you eat an orange, you get many different beneficial parts of this plant converted from terpenes, which would, for instance, have limonene in it, that would convert to a protein, that would then convert to something in your body that would support cell health. And we can all agree upon that, if taken in a natural, beneficial way. Now, when we look at cannabis and hemp specifically, in this case, when we're talking about 100% legally hemp-derived compounds from this beneficial plant, we can see that it can provide us with very similar terpenes, profiles, and phyto-rich cannabinoids that then, of course, support our system, just as I'm talking about. So it's important to look at anything that we consume as either something that's going to foster a support into what our immune system is attempting to do in our central nervous system and our endocannabinoid system, or it's going to essentially, if we're taking in something that's not good for us, pesticides, chemicals, it's going to really tax and put a tax, I should say, on our immune system. So it's really key that in our society, we have the ability to fight back against some of these issues that really break down our immunity, fight against bacteria, fight against fungus, fungal diseases, and things like that, just by simply supporting our body with something completely natural. So as you've heard, I've talked about so many different things. I've talked about the benefits of cannabinoids ranging from, pain management issues, where we've seen many different people be able to utilize these types of supports just to basically put themselves in a position where the cell communication isn't such a rapid point, or such a rabid point, that it's you're in such pain. So instead of having to maybe take a pain pill, you can take something that supports your endocannabinoid system instead of just blocking a pain center, which is really important, because those types of things, although necessary in certain methods, aren't necessarily a sustainable method. And so we really want to work towards sustainable methods of supporting our endocannabinoid system, supporting our body, supporting our immune system. And that's really what these cannabinoids do. Now, as we work over the years through testing and understanding how they support the endocannabinoid system through research, we can see that there are many other beneficial cannabinoids that we'll talk about in a later talk. However, we're going to move in and talk about how these beneficial cannabinoids that are so very important support your endocannabinoid system. So the endocannabinoid system is essentially a makeup of connections and pathways that send signals. So as we look on the diagram, we can see in the pink and blue circles CB2 receptors and CB1 receptors. Now these receptors are essentially, if we could picture them as cell phone towers within your body that send and receive signals. Now we can see that they're located throughout the entire part of the body. Now we can find these different receptors located through different parts of our body, predominantly located in different sections. Now, the CB1 receptors are predominantly located in organs, internal organs. They work through the immune system, brain, lungs, etc. However, the CB2 receptors are predominantly located in our cardiovascular system, which is our bones. That's going to be, our bone, skin, spleen, as you can see. That's really going to support and speak to the communication supports of things that work on an osteo level. On the left side for CB1, we're going to talk about self-communication. So we can really kind of break these into two sectors, even though they're partly, I think, partly combined, certainly. If we look on the left at CB1, we're talking about a lot of communication. Now, a lot of these different areas that we're looking at, the gastrointestinal tract, which I'd like to talk about, I think is important, has millions of nerve endings in them. And so what these nerve endings really are doing is they're sending and receiving messages. So people that, for instance, have IBS or IBD, irritable bowel syndrome, irritable bowels, or Crohn's, they're having pain receptors in their internal organs in their gastrointestinal tract that is sending and receiving pain signals. And those cells are essentially screaming out. So what we've seen is by simply supporting the endocannabinoid system, and by supplying the body and these receptors, the CB1 receptors, with these cannabinoids, what it does is it essentially sends these signals that essentially support to calm these signals. So instead of having an improper signal or a synapse that is happening from your brain, for instance, to your gastrointestinal tract or your stomach, what it's doing is it's calming those signals that are essentially being inflamed or overactive or overproductive. Now, for whatever reason, it may be something that is hereditary, maybe due to a diet, you've been having gastrointestinal issues, but by simply taking something like CBD, in the past we've seen that what it does is it doesn't cure it. It doesn't essentially alleviate it, other than it, from a proactive level, then starts to support the cells, and over a period of time, then starts to relieve the tension, the anxiety, and the pain that's actually happening at that level. So it's relieving the signals that are sending and receiving those pain signals. So I think it's important to understand that these cannabinoid receptors are the cell phone and complete communication systems, or the internet even, of your body. So by simply supporting these cannabinoid systems, we can then really do some great things for our body. And again, we're not talking about a drug, we're not talking about a cure, we're talking about a proactive support that you can take, because many drugs out there are not sustainable. Many drugs are out there, they're there to quote unquote treat something. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're not to prevent, we're not to treat, we're not to cure any disease, and that's an FDA statement that we're making. We're here to give you the supports from a natural, beneficial standpoint that you don't fall into those categories. Simply enough said is, I'm saying take your vegetables, take something that is natural and beneficial and is going to support your body, and something that can be sustainable. So we'll talk a little bit about our work, and I'd like to just leave this diagram up for just a moment. But when we talk about somebody that has neurological disorders, of which I've worked in the past with children, and I still do today, work with many different children, I'd like to go ahead and say that the neurological disorders have been the most important part of our work, and what I think was the real impetus of us starting our work. This is probably 10 years into my career with cannabis, and then moving into state licensed facilities and launching these state licensed facilities. And we came up on a little girl that really needed some help, and we were able to work with her. She had some serious neurological disorders, and it's a local story. I'm sure you've heard about it. If you're local right now and you're watching this, you may have seen that in the local news. And nationally, it was also a national story that was released in Dope Magazine about a little girl by the name of Kirsten Moore, and she's incredibly special to our heart, and what we've been doing here for many years. So I just wanted to kind of give a little homage to her, and thank her for taking me on this journey. I was initially in state licensed medical cannabis facilities and working with CBD, and that really gave me the opportunity to take our research to the next level and to really impact her life and her mother's life. And we're just really thankful for that opportunity. So we'll go ahead and move on from this slide. I think everybody has a pretty good idea of the endocannabinoid system and how those different receptors work. And this slide, and of course this talk will be up later, so you guys can go ahead and review it at your leisure, as well as we're live on Facebook. And we're gonna go ahead and move on. So I think it's important to understand that not only do we have the endocannabinoid system, but how does it really truly work in tandem with our central nervous system. So when we talk about our central nervous system, we've always believed that that is the end-all be-all for anything that happens in our body. And that's usually how it's addressed whenever we go to the doctor. New research has shown, and of course this research goes back many years, however it necessarily hasn't been prevalent. The first research on endocannabinoid system was developed in the 1940s by a team of scientists in Chicago at the University of Illinois. That research then went quiet, and that was just around the time of the 1938 Industrial Hemp Act. So we really saw a huge loss for research and for the opportunity for people to really understand what the endocannabinoid system can do and how it works with the central nervous system. Later on, that research would then be picked up by a Dr. Raphael Mechoulam. He's a very important man out of Israel, and we can call him the godfather of cannabinoids. And his research essentially over the last probably 45 to 50 years has led him to some interesting conclusions that we've all come to find out. And essentially, one of those is that the endocannabinoid system is actually the governor for the central nervous system. And I want everybody to really understand that when I say that. Now the governor, as you can understand, would be what governs and what controls and what regulates the central nervous system. And again, typically it's addressed when you have an issue. The central nervous system is something that's addressed, but that's something I believe we're kind of missing the boat with modern medicine, believing that we might know everything. And with that, we may be missing out on some very hard questions we're not asking. So with that being said, the endocannabinoid system is really the governor for the central nervous system. So as it governs all of these issues and all these functions that are, of course, working naturally as I talk, and all these involuntary functions that are happening as I talk and move and just, of course, breathe. The endocannabinoid system has an ability to govern those. Now, we didn't really understand from a personal level how important that was until we started to supply these endocannabinoid systems in children and in people with these cannabinoids. And what it did is it started to immediately convert to cell communication, and we call that cell support. And with that cell communication, in the past, these children were having many different unwanted cellular communications, meaning synapses that were firing, and we call those seizures. So these are unwanted synapses that essentially happen in vocal movements, physical movements, and it's very important in some cases that these are controlled. And so obviously this is why people have anti-seizure medication and why we're, very prevalent in the field. Modern medicine has been very prevalent in working with these so-called issues. So with us, I think it's been important to look at the research from a different standpoint and to take a step back and say, well, we understand that the central nervous system is making all these things happen, but we really want to recognize that the government or the governor of the central nervous system is that endocannabinoid system. So if we're not supplying the endocannabinoid system with these beneficial cannabinoids, I think we're really running the risk of not supplying ourselves with something that we need. Now, if we had something called the vitamin C system and we weren't supplying ourselves with vitamin C, I would probably question that. However, this just is something that's not been regularly studied in the medical fields over the last few years. It's not something that's regularly been used in the toolkits of the modern medicine. And we can understand that plant medicine goes back thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And so I think it's important to understand that sustainability, supporting our immune system, supporting our endocannabinoid system, which then ultimately supports our central nervous system, is going to put us in a position of being able to give our immune system and our own physical supports the most longevity that we can have. Because again, we're all made up of cells, everybody. Billions and billions of cells, from our eyeballs to our organs to our skin to our bones. And without supporting those cells in many different ways, with all the modern technology that we have, we're still missing the boat in so many ways. And I think that this kind of brings me to my next point when we talk about taking something and trying to refine it to a point that it is past natural. It is so far past natural that it becomes maybe marketable, but it's not something that's going to really help you. So again, as we talk about the endocannabinoid system, I really cannot push home the importance of understanding that this is what the governor is. And through time and time again through our research, whether it's with neurological disorders or with neuropathic disorders, and we talk about pain issues, osteo issues, arthritis, fibromyalgia, ongoing issues with people in that realm. And then, of course, cell proliferation. When we talk about cell proliferation and tumors and all these different issues that we've been having as a society, we really have to start taking a step back and asking ourselves, what are we really missing here? We're one of the most advanced societies in this planet. Obviously here in the United States, the EU, all these different developing countries. And for some reason, we have some of the highest growing cancer rates. We have autism rates that are off the charts that have been growing. I've given talks on those specifically in some of my talks that talks about the percentages of children with autism that have been growing. And we specifically work with children with autism as well. And I want to give a shout out to the Matos family, Rihanna and Silas, excuse me. We really hope you guys are doing well. And I just actually saw your husband the other day, and we're really glad to see that Silas is doing so well and he's able to start school. So wishing you well during this time. We're going to move on a little bit now that we understand the importance of the endocannabinoid system, supplying our endocannabinoid system with these beneficial cannabinoids. Again, beneficial cannabinoids from a full spectrum plant is going to be the most important thing. And I think that's what we've been talking about a little bit. If you see the thread, is getting something from our natural diet that can be sustainable. And I think when we look at Chinese medicine, we look at the supports and benefits that they've had over, hundreds of thousands of years. I want to say thousands of years at least, depending on where you believe time started. I want to say that, these types of natural beneficial plants, phytocannabinoid-rich plants. I had a great discussion with another doctor, Dr. Julie Lee, and we were talking about phytoplankton. And, very similar, again, we're talking about these phyto-rich plants. And we were having a discussion that these sea turtles, they actually live and eat this phytoplankton and algae. That's all they eat. 450-pound sea turtles that I would swim with in Hawaii, and these massive creatures. So again, it's key to understand that we can really get some beneficial things from plants. Now, I'm again a meat eater. I'm not here to talk about being vegetarian or vegan. That's your own choice. Although I would definitely promote eating more healthy and sustainable foods. But again, talking about the qualities of things that we can get. And I think that's really been my mission and what everything that I've done from being a chef over the many years and then doing our research, working with cannabis and then working in state licensed facilities, working to launch dispensaries is working to take our research and understand how that really works with quality control, and finding the best, I want to say, back to basics methods of getting these whole plant benefits to us in the optimum ways. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about these different types of delivery methods. So we're going to talk about, first of all, quality and the types of products that are out there. So we're all very familiar with full spectrum oil. I'm sure you've heard of CBD isolates. We're going to talk about full spectrum oil, and we're going to make the distinction between full spectrum oil and isolates in our discussion today, because I think it's also very important that we understand in this, the search for these phyto-rich plant cannabinoids, and still our lack of understanding. Again, we've been able to isolate maybe a handful of these cannabinoids, and there's still yet hundreds that we're trying to isolate and understand. So I think that puts us at the infancy still, even 10 years into our research, where we're doing testing, third-party testing, working with, labs across the countries and physicians, really puts us at the infancy of our research. So I don't want to jump you forward and say that, the CBD and the CBN and the Cbg is everything, because to be quite frank, there are many different beneficial cannabinoids that we could be missing out on that are in this plant's compositional makeup. So again, we're going to talk about getting a whole plant and how important that is to get this whole plant. Again, if you eat an orange, the best thing you can do if you want to get vitamin C is to eat an orange, to get tangerine, to eat lemons, limes. If you want limonene, which is a beneficial terpene, you want to get that in through citrus. Well, it's the same thing. These beneficial plant compounds, essentially what they do is they have these types of terpenes. They have these phyto-rich compounds. So I think it's important that we can take these compounds then we can say, okay, how can we get them in the most important way into our body? And so I'm going to go on to that in just a moment here. I'm going to take a quick look. We've got a couple little chats here. Looks like we got Terry and Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and Matt. All right, looks like we got Brandon. We got some people remotely here as well. And Nate, thank you. Hey, Cheryl. Hey, Nate, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you. I can see some of the other people here. I can't see their names on there. But again, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. So again, understanding quality, most important thing that we can do is get the most natural beneficial plant substance directly into our body. The whole concept for me with my concept at Source was essentially knowing the source of which you get your foods, knowing the source of which you get the water you get, knowing, you know, we can go right up the creek here to get our water directly out of a natural spring in a beautiful creek setting here in Sedona. So getting the right types of natural beneficial compounds in the most natural back to basics methods is the most important thing. I'll talk a little bit about that. So let's compare, say, getting a full spectrum plant resource like we've talked about to getting, say, something like an isolated resource that's been isolated. Now, we could probably guess that the isolated part of the plant is going to be more powerful because it's isolated, and it's going to have more benefits because it's been isolated in such a way. But again, I think it's important to understand that the full spectrum benefits is really what we want to get, because you can't get any more benefits from an orange other than eating an orange. Now, the reason people eat vitamin C and vitamin C supports and different vitamins is because they're not getting them in their day-to-day diet. They don't have time to sit down and eat 2 oranges a day or an orange a day. You know, they're not getting these types of things in their diet. And it's really difficult, and I totally get it myself. But that's why we have the ability through good, honest research and through finding these natural beneficial plant sources to say, yeah, we can find these things, we can extract them in the right way, in a healthy way, and then we can get them into our body. Now, that's really the most important thing that we can do. So when we talk about a full spectrum plant compound, that full spectrum plant compound, which is going to be one of the delivery methods, is really going to be the most important and most effective. Because what is that going to do? Well, it's going to have everything that you need. You have everything that you need that hasn't been compromised, hasn't been broken down, hasn't been isolated. But also we're going to talk about the way that things are essentially uptaken in your body. Well, we use a term called bioavailable. Now that term bioavailable means the bioavailability, the availability for some sort of biomass, some sort of biomatter, or some sort of, you know, bio process to be uptaken into your body. Now, there are many different ways to take CBD. The most natural and beneficial way that you can do it, I mean, you can vape it, you can essentially, you can get it through a full spectrum oil, you can get it through an isolate, you can get it in gummy bears, you can get it in CBD water now. I mean, we're seeing it in so many different places here. So I can get a little shadow there, everybody. So we can see it in so many different places. Now, the important thing to understand, though, is it effective and what is it really doing for us? So what we'd really like to do is say, well, is it full spectrum? Does it have the most beneficial plant compounds? What does it have in it? Well, if you were to bring me 2 oranges or 2 vitamin C's and let's say a capsule, I would certainly by any means, I would take that vitamin C without a doubt. All right. I mean, who wouldn't, right? No, I would not. No. See, I would take the natural beneficial oranges. I would take the oranges and I would eat them. Now I might have to eat 2 or 3 oranges, but I would be getting the natural beneficial compound. Now, hey, the isolate seems like it's better. Maybe even a doctor recommended it. That's okay, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the ability to get a full spectrum compound into our body. Why? Well, the bioavailability of it. It's going to give us the ability to be uptaken into our body. Then it's going to bond with things like our fat cells, because we have actual cells in our body. And these fat cells in our organs, what they do is they take in these different beneficial compounds. And then what they do is they then transition them by bonding to the fat cells through your body. They then transition into your body, into your internal organs. They pass the blood-brain barrier. They go into your bloodstream. They go into your brain, literally into your pathways. And then they give the ability to transfer these different beneficial cannabinoids to you, which is key. So that's really the most important thing that we can do in getting these natural beneficial cannabinoids, is to get something that's completely natural and completely beneficial to us. So if we want to talk about quality, we want to talk about a process. So again, if you can get the most natural beneficial cannabinoids, and you can get them in a natural delivery, typically we would suggest something like with a coconut oil, of course, all organic. You don't want to put anything in your body that isn't organic or naturally produced, because again, we're just putting one thing after the other. You're just putting the bad after the bad. You know, you're trying to, alleviate some sort of issue, when in effect, you may be taking something else that's just exacerbating the issue. So again, understanding quality. Now, how do we understand quality? How do we know what products we're getting if they're really good for us? Now, you say we stay away from pesticides. Well, you can't look at a box of anything that you go to, and really guarantee it doesn't have pesticides. You know, the USDA standards, I'll let you in on a little secret here. The USDA standards allow 2 to 3% of chemicals. Yes, 2 to 3% of chemicals in all of the foods to test organic. So if I would like to meet those standards, of which I had to look at one time for a state licensed cannabis, I had to go and research the standards and speak with the USDA and find out what those were. Now, these are also EU standards. So it's very interesting to see what a lot of these standards are really doing and how we can move further with the supply chain that we're working with, or the people that we're working with, to get a better sense of how we can really essentially get a better source, and that's really where we're at. So most important thing when you're looking at CBD is to get some test results, and to make sure that those test results are going to read without pesticides, are going to read without chemicals, and all sorts of other fun stuff that is usually and predominantly put in foods. Sorry, here I go, a little shadow, everybody. I'm gonna move here, adjust my space, keep adjusting with the sun. Thank you, everybody. All right. So essentially, we're going to talk about test results, and this is really how you understand quality through a process. So we're going to queue up some test results, and we're going to go over, first of all, potency, which I think is very important. But we don't just want to look for potency, because if you're just looking for potency, you might just be getting an isolate. You might just be getting that isolated vitamin C. So we'll go ahead and queue up those test results here in just a second. Looks like we may have had them. All right, perfect. So as we can see here, scrolling down, maybe go to the top page, or I'm sorry, the first page. Thank you, we're just queuing those up. And we're just gonna look at potency really quick and show some of the cannabinoids that you typically wanna see. So to understand quality, typically if you wanna go ahead and look at a product that is high quality, you wanna first look at some minimum requirements that any product has to meet. And it's very key that they do meet these requirements. You may just be getting something that isn't going to be as beneficial, or certainly not as effective, or a little more cost than you'd like to pay for something. So again, when we look to the right here, we can see our cannabinoid relative concentration. And those relative concentrations, start at the top with CBC, which you can see that we have the cannabichromene in this test result right here that we're looking at, this example. Also the CBD. As we scroll down here, we can also see the CBDV. And let's see here, scrolling down, we see some CBN, cannabidiol. And of course, we see the under of the delta-9 THC, which is actually going to test under for the negative level. So we're looking right here at the cannabinoid levels, total cannabinoids. We have 1,437 cannabinoids. And it looks like this is a 1,000 milligram product, so that's going to by far meet the amount of cannabinoids, and that's with the entire compounds we're seeing in there, why there are actually so many different cannabinoids in such a concentration. We don't just like to see CBD in a product. If we're looking at a product, we definitely want to see the other beneficial cannabinoids, and we'd like to see some high relative compounds of those. So again, just make sure that if you're looking at a product, if it's a 30 milliliter bottle, it's at least got the relative amount of concentration per milligram, which a milligram and a milliliter are exactly interchangeable. So if you're looking at a test result that says 5 milligrams per milliliter, and it's a 30 milliliter bottle, you can assume that it would have 150 milligrams in it. We'll go ahead and scroll to the next test result. And I think this is, again, when we're talking about quality, the underlining and most important things. Hey, Matt, there we go. I just want to say hi again to everybody that's watching. Cue up this next test result. And this is really going to talk about what you really want to see when we're talking about pesticides, when we're talking about heavy metals. If you look on this test result that we're going to cue up, you'll see that we actually really look at all these things on the right-hand side here. You can see on the left as well, we'll stop here, all of these different pesticide compounds that are typically in the foods that you eat, the things that you drink, the wines that you consume, the beers that you like to drink when you come home after work. Even if they're meeting a USDA organic standard, they're going to actually have levels that don't meet this LOQ standard. And as you can see, this LOQ, this is very, very important. LOQ means levels of quantity, and that's below the levels of quantifiable ability for the testing equipment. And they have their own limits that they test for, that the testing equipment actually has the ability. So it's actually below any of the abilities of equipment to test that we can find anything to prove that this is a 100% organic product. Now, that's important to say, because if we could look at everything that we consume and say, okay, well, it says organic on it, but I brought home my my snack bars, or my lettuce, or my cereal for my son, and I can see that it doesn't have any of these compounds, which is very important, because these aren't things you want to get in your body. Because if you're really trying to help yourself of any issues that you might be having, you're probably going to be exacerbating it. And that's really the society that we're living in. And I don't really want to drone on about this, but I do really want to bring up that it is very, very important to understand that the foods that are so-called healthy, most likely, probably contain things that aren't healthy, unless you know the source of which you're getting your foods from. And this is the key, where I like to get farm-raised food from people that we know. We have our garden out back. If you look just over here, you'll see a beautiful garden. It's important for us to get those types of things so that we can ensure a good process. Same thing with the water. We like to get our water supply from a certain supplier, or we'll go up the creek. So again, if we look on the right-hand side here, we can see some very harmful things that are really occur in many different things. So we can see the E. coli, salmonella, aerobic bacteria, arsenic, cadmium, lead, mercury. These are all things that you will find in many different foods that you're consuming, unfortunately. And it really has to do with the quality of water that they're either being fed. Like, let's say, you're out there eating some products that are being grown in an area, vegetables that are being grown in an area where they're using water that's real heavy in metals. A lot of groundwater has that. And some of the groundwater where we're at, we have some real heavy metals. Picture, growing some vegetables in Flint, Michigan. Well, I'm sure the vegetables would actually grow if you could adjust the metals content. But again, you're going to be consuming those. Now, think about this. When we extract an oil, when we extract an oil from a plant, as you know, essential oils, if you're familiar with essential oils, they're a high extracted compound. So you're taking any of the relative compounds that are in there, and you're really extracting them to a point that it's at its highest levels of compounds. Now, that's actually even worse, because if you do have high levels of pesticides or chemicals or fungus or mold, mycotoxins, what's going to happen is it's going to actually concentrate those levels. So what's going to happen is you're going to be actually consuming food, or an oil in this case. If you're getting a product that's not really from a reputable source, you may be consuming an oil that has a multitude of these different chemicals and pesticides without seeing these test results. So it is very important that as a consumer, that you guys go to, and wherever you're looking at any products, you make sure to see a test result that not only shows potency, but then again shows all of these different processes were tested for, because this is a very expensive test. Now, each one of these tests probably costs $600 to $650. And to test that on a multiple different product lines, a lot of companies aren't really going through that quality control process. And there's no standards that say that they have to. Even, this is all the way up to Kellogg's, Kroger, Simple Truth, which has been purchased by Kroger, Simple Truth was a really great company. And now they've been purchased by a company like Kroger, which I'm not going to cast any aspersions on Kroger at all. But again, I do understand that you're becoming further detached from the supplier, the supply chain. and the person that you're getting that food from. It's like, you know, who do you love when you go down to that farmer's market? You know, you really know the person you're dealing with. You can get something from them that you know that they're invested in, they've invested their life in, and they're not going to compromise that for anybody. So again, very important, test results, no COA, no way. That's one of the phrases I like to use when I speak nationally. And of course, for any physician. And this is one other thing you want to make sure, if in looking at the test results before, that it does have the non-detectable levels of THC or LOQ levels meeting below 0.30%. That's 0.30% or more disqualifies the product as hemp oil, meaning it cannot qualify as hemp oil. And some of the stuff out there runs a little hot, meaning you could be taking it and possibly fail a drug test, etc. So I think it's important to understand the processes. Make sure that you're getting, you know, the product again from a quality source. You know, go in and speak to your local store about it. Go and speak to your local physician. You know, there's a lot of studies online. Make sure you're getting the right information. But again, I can just give you guys the best information for yourself to make, you know, the best educated, I think, decision that you guys can do. So, all right, here we go. All right. We talked a little bit about isolates and vitamin C and how they're very similar. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about who can benefit from CBD. So it's not just you and I, not just you and I that can benefit from CBD. And of course, all the different humans out there. Our research over the past 6 years, leading us to the equine community, leading us heavily into the pet community, with, of course, canines, felines, which also, interestingly enough, led us to our largest feline research that we were doing with a 400-pound Bengal tiger, which is one of the most rare species, a white Bengal tiger. I don't know if you've ever seen them. You may have seen them on Siegfried and Roy, but they are very, very rare. And there's actually one that has been taken care of so very well that is actually at a refuge, a wildlife park refuge here called Out of Africa Wildlife Park. Now, we had an opportunity to work with not only this rare Bengal tiger by the name of Chalet, who was suffering from some issues with cancer that has spread to her entire body, and we were basically working with her for end-of-life care. But her buddy and her great pal, a lion, another wonderful feline there, large cat by the name of Kumba, about a 400-pound lion, who's her best friend, who we also work with. So extending our research not only to, at least this experimental research, we should call it, over the past many years, not just from humans, but to the wildlife community, but to pets, and even to invertebrates such as snakes. We had a really interesting story at Out of Africa Wildlife Park that was documented by CBS News with Apollo. If Zach, Ayla, if you're watching out there, we're going to talk a little bit about Apollo. He's a 130-pound boa. It was Zach's little guy. He had grown him from just a little tiny snake, and he got so big he couldn't take care of him anymore. So the wildlife park, which they are a rescue, they're actually one of the only parks that operate as a rescue. They're not a park where they keep caged animals where you can go and see them. They're a wildlife refuge. He brought Apollo there, and Apollo at about 130 pounds and 12, 14 feet, developed a very large tumor, a grapefruit-sized tumor, about 6 inches. And in a period of 7 weeks working with Apollo, the trainers over Dean and Prairie, the owners, I'd like to say hello to Dean and Prairie, the owners of Out of Africa Wildlife Park. Thankful for you guys to give us a chance to come out there and do some of these experimental treatments and supports with Apollo. It ended up working wonderfully on document, and this is probably one of our most amazing cases in this experimental phase. I was able to shrink this tumor from 6 inches, almost a grapefruit-sized tumor that was actually pressing on some of his internal organs. It would have killed him. He was able to reduce that tumor by over 80% to about 1.5 inches. And since then, the snake has not grown the tumor again. So it was really interesting to see that. And when we talk about cell proliferation. So again, I think understanding that we're not the only species that can benefit from these different types of plants. I myself have worked nationally, working with many different veterinarians, as well as giving my accredited lectures across the nation to really uncover the different benefits. And I think it's just been an amazing journey. I think our next talk coming up, I believe, is going to be on the 31st, and we're going to be having Dr. Jennifer Birch. I believe we had it for the 14th, but I think we're going to have to reschedule for the 31st. It's going to be with Dr. Jennifer Birch. She is the president of the International Academy of Compounding Pharmacists, and I've worked with her and had the opportunity to lecture with her. And she's amazing. She's been using our products on the East Coast for some time. And we're going to be doing a series of talks. This is really just our first talk today. And we're going to be doing a series of talks now that I cannot tour nationally and speak to crowds to really educate. I'm going to be doing a series of talks with these different pharmacists, doctors, as well as a host of local doctors. Hi, Julio. It's great to see you back again there. And we're going to be doing a host of these different educations. The next talk that we're going to be focusing on is really going to be a specific focus talk talking about blood disorders. And I think that's going to be something that we've been really focusing on as far as our research for the last probably 2.5 years. We've had some amazing, just amazing results there, and I cannot wait to share them. A few cases, essentially some trials that we've been running. So really excited about that. And we also have another talk coming up. That's going to be with Dr. Sue Horton. And she's actually from Iowa, and I met her also from one of the groups at the International Academy of Compounding Pharmacists. And it looks like we're also going to be having, Dr. Jessica Heyman coming up. Very excited about that as well. Dr. Jessica Heyman is a local. She's a friend, and then she's a huge proponent of natural supports. She's been doing some actual very interesting things on microneedling with the skin, and these are skin treatments. You may hear about microneedling in the future where they plan to do a microneedle tattoo in some biometrics, but it's a very simple method of which they take a patch that has tons of microneedles apparently, not simple, but I'll explain it simply, I'm sorry. And basically the full spectrum oil is the patch is infused with it. And then it's actually microneedled into the skin, and this is for skin supports because she works as a dermatologist as well. So really interesting there as we talk about skin support. So I'm just going to kind of wrap it up. We talked about the cell supports. We talked about the cell proliferation and the cell health. And I think it's key to understand really when we wrap it up is just to have the supports to be able to give those cells, which again, our body is made up of all these cells, to be able to have the ability to communicate and send the correct messages. So that, of course, speaks to cell proliferation and communication. But then that also gives the ability to calm so many of the different issues that we're having from pain, osteoarthritis, different things like that. Because the communication signals are really the root. And if we can really speak to the communication of the cells, then we can really speak to the ability to support the health of the cells. And I think that, again, goes by supporting the endocannabinoid system, which then supports the central nervous system. So it's really just kind of a long line of knowing what function supports the next, and doing your best to get something that's natural, beneficial, and get it from the right source. And that's really where we're at. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Those of you that
Oh, sorry. Finish. I was just going to say we were going to move on to the questions, but finish what you were going to say. Sorry.
Perfect. Yeah. Before I close, and we'll go ahead and take a few questions today.
Absolutely. So for those of you that haven't submitted a question yet, there's a little box for Q&A somewhere around here in your window. So if you have a question for Ian, make sure that you submit it in the meantime. We have a couple of questions here. The first one is, you were talking about cannabinoids and you know how when you're looking at a COA, you're not just looking for CBD. THC is another cannabinoid. How does it get involved in the whole equation? Where does it stand? Should you be looking for it or not?
Okay, well, it depends on your lifestyle. Now, for instance, if you do consume THC in your regular lifestyle, because medical marijuana is prevalent, it's been, and of course, you are friends to the north, it has been legalized, and of course, in many different states and and countries, of course, states across the United States. We're moving on like 20 states right now that are 18 that have legalized it or have some sort of form of medical marijuana program. So I really want to legitimize that because that's where my research came from. So if for any reason that you can have THC in your diet and it works for you, it's something that you've had in your diet, that's basically if you've been a regular user of it, I may say that that's something that you can then introduce, and that continue to introduce through cannabinoids through other forms. Again, using CBD with THC. However, for the very small amount of the population that can really benefit from that or needs cannabis, I'm just going to be honest that what we've come to understand is that the true benefits of this plant aren't the THC. In the beginning, when we first talked about THC, for instance, the government will prescribe you THC and still does to this day. What's really, I think, the misstep is when they were doing their trials, I believe that they were just focusing on the fact that they were taking cannabis and that THC was affecting them in a certain way. But they didn't really do the further research to isolate the other cannabinoids. So I don't believe that they understood that the other cannabinoids are really playing such a role. And so THC, while it does play a role for a psychotropic part of it, really when we talk about the benefits for cell support, cell communication, and overall cell health, and the conversion of these to proteins, it really does have to do with these other beneficial cannabinoids. And so I think we don't really want people to miss the boat on that. That THC is definitely, I'll be quite honest, it's something that I've had in my diet and I utilize because I've had shingles since 2006. And that gives me the opportunity and has given me the opportunity. Really, it was the first impetus of myself going into medical marijuana and finding out that I could use this for something completely different, nerve pain, instead of being on, Percocet.
Painkillers or
I was definitely able to change my own lifestyle with it. So I think that understanding that it wasn't the THC that is calming the pain for me, or is working to support my body from a health standpoint. It may block the signals, literally give you kind of the perception of that it's being blocked, and it does make you forget about it. But it certainly can alleviate it. Really, it doesn't work for the inflammation like the other cannabinoids do, because that's what we talk about. It's really working to support all those different things, the self-communication, and that's why people use it for recovery. CBD has been hugely used in the sports community for recovery, because what it does is it tells the cells to chill out, calm down, start communicating, talk nicely. Because you picture if you fall down and you hurt your knee, that area is just inflamed. It's really just a bunch of angry cells yelling at each other, saying, "I'm mad, I'm mad." It's sending a signal to your brain, going, "I'm mad, I'm angry," and it hurts, and it hurts. So really, that's what I learned from nerve pain with shingles, because it's nerve pain. So it's really about controlling the synapses. It's not about the pain, because you can take pain pills all day, which they gave me for shingles. It doesn't ultimately help, because it's just it's trying to block the receptors, but it's ultimately not working. And it's building up further issues in that area with the cells, because they're being they're being further angered.
And the whole having all the cannabinoids there actually help fix the problem.
For sure. And again, THC again helps me from more of a psychotropic level, and then the other cannabinoids, for instance, the shingles, that's what really relaxes my body, and again, for topical inflammation, things like that. So definitely, I don't want to discount THC by any means, but for the general consumer that's watching this today, and probably 95%, I really want to say about 95% of the people in the United States probably don't need THC. Very few people, end of life, cancer, HIV, appetite stimulation, and of course, just if it works for your diet and it works for that's
specific cases, you would say.
Anxiety, there are many different benefits to it. Again, I benefit from it as well. I don't want to discount it, but in this case, you definitely don't want to be getting a product with THC if you're a normal consumer, because you could risk running the riot of having drug tests and
something like that, or
risking of breaking the law, which would not be good. And really, I think that's what our research has taught us, that people are looking to get healed, not high. That's what we find in the dispensaries. That's what I started to find early in my 2014. People were really looking to get healed. That's the 40 and above. Now maybe 30 and below, it's a different, you know what I mean?
No, I can empathize with that. Weighing 125 pounds, getting the healing is more important than the getting high.
Sure.
On that note, you talking about CBD oil, Matt here is asking, why do you think CBD oil is so expensive?
Oh, well, probably the process. Well, I think the marketing perception of it too. When CBD first came out, it was extremely expensive. And that also, I think, fairly had to do with the cost of extraction, the cost of the technology. When I was first consulting on extraction, I was consulting with the former vice president and chairman of Otterbox. And I was, in Colorado, and I'd flown up there to look at some of their equipment. And they were working with a guy by the name of Greg Jackson, who literally shoots stuff up into space. His job is to make stuff for the space program. And so when you're talking about the cost of developing these types of processes, you know, the equipment, $500,000 for one extraction unit that would take 8 hours to produce 30 milliliters. You know, the throughput, the technology, you know, it really took a long time to come on board. And now what we're unfortunately seeing is a race to the bottom in pricing and quality. Now, Matt, you can probably get some pretty affordable products out there. But again, I think you have to be wary of that, because isolates, you know, of which were the most expensive, as we talked about CBD isolates, which are pharmaceutical grade extract, like the vitamin isolate, were really coveted and the most expensive because it was a new process. It was easily, you know, put into foods, chocolates, waters, all sorts of stuff. But what happened was the effectiveness of it, the efficacy, as we like to say, really wasn't there. And over a period of years, people started to kind of see that, and the prices just dropped. And that also, the prices also really dropped with the ability for people to process it and other, you know, other processes.
Does that tie into the bioavailability point that you were making earlier? Is it that isolate is less bioavailable?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, isolate is definitely less bioavailable, and it's a really affordable process now, and it's just incredibly cheap. So it is like the lower rung, most affordable, whereas full spectrum at a point was more affordable than isolate. Now isolate has gone far to the bottom, but full spectrum is kind of the optimum process. So, you know, if you're getting supercritical extract, for instance, like if you're getting a product with supercritical CO2 extract, you're talking about a very expensive process. And that, I mean, it's, you know, again, the equipment is $500,000 to multi-million dollars to process. Now you can get other types of products, you know, lower grade extracts that are produced with, you know, all sorts of different things like butane and hexane and pentane. You know, but it's really about the process and making sure that they're extracted and looking at those test results. So, you know, again, yes, the products are expensive, but if you're finding the right product, you should probably only be on a monthly supply. And the trade-off, you know, like for instance, a child that we work with that has, you know, multiple seizures, the trade-off of anti-seizure medication is $2,000 a month. May or may not be insured, but in that case, you know, the few $100s, you know, of which, you know, we subsidize in that case because we like to do things and we like to support. But again, yes, it is one of those things where the processes for the high quality products are still going to be expensive. But make sure you get a good product, because there's also market perception. If it's in a really expensive box, it doesn't necessarily mean, and they have a great marketing campaign, chances are they're spending more money on the marketing campaign and the look of the product than they are in the actual ingredients. You know, I like to go
do you think that companies are, do you think that there's enough information out there for people to be able to get educated in learning the difference? Like what, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how would you, how would I, not knowing the difference between, you know, a cheap product with an expensive bottle or expensive packaging and a really high-end product, how would you easily know the difference between the two?
Gosh, that's going to be a challenge. I mean, the test results, you know, typically
the COA.
Yeah, your COA. Any reputable company will have their certificate of analysis online, ready for you to see with a batch, so you can look at that product and say, hey, this is the product I purchased, or I'm looking at purchasing. I'm standing in line right now. I'm on my cell phone, and I'm looking online. Here's their certificate of analysis, and I can see it has the actual amount of cannabinoids. I can see they processed it. They took the time to actually test it for these 5 different things, not just. If they just test it for potency and they didn't test it for all of these other things, like toxins, myotoxins, fungus, mold, pesticides, then that's going to be a big red flag. You know, and then you could say, well, it looks like a nice product, but they're not going through the processes to ensure the quality.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you really, unfortunately in this society, you really have to kind of do your own digging, and you have to really do your own due diligence more and more when you're looking at any product, you know. So COA, again, you know, I do understand that the products are expensive, and hopefully over time, as the processes improve, we'll be able to see those come down. I think that's, you know, I think that's really ultimate. But there are also, you know, there are a high-end effective products, and there are also affordable and effective products on the mid-tier. It's really just about looking at them, finding them, and saying, you know, what are they doing? You know, do they have that COA, and is it going to work?
Okay. Well, for those people that are wondering how to necessarily read a COA, if you're not, you know, super confident, I believe we released a blog post on it a few weeks back. So on Source CBD Hemp, you should be able to find sourcecbdhemp.com. You should be able to find in our blog how to read a COA. Someone here is asking, how important is the time of day for dosing?
Okay, so I would say in the morning, we typically recommend, we'll talk about bioavailability. We're typically looking at that 8-hour period for something to become bioavailable about 45 minutes after you've taken it. It's basically in your body, it's starting to work, it's starting to become part of your processes. And, in this case, it would be in your bloodstream. So I would say about 8 hours it's going to last. So in the morning, we typically recommend. Now, people ask, should I take it with or without food? It's not necessary. If you are like me, I'm not a get up in the morning and eat right away type of person. I might have a piece of fruit at best, but it usually takes me a few hours to get going, exercise, and then I'm ready to eat. So, with that being said, it's something that I want to take in the morning regardless. And then something that's going to last throughout the day. And then towards the evening or the night, then you can go ahead and take it again to kind of keep that bioavailability going, depending on your needs, if it's something that you're choosing as daily support, or if it's something that, anxiety, something like that, you're using as a daily support, or just for your diet to support, and then when you're sleeping, you're okay. Or if you have some serious issues, then you may have to actually, take it again before bed, as we do with some of the children, with some of these products. It's necessary for them to take it more than once to twice.
And when you're taking it, how do you know what potency or what dosage to give yourself?
Very important. So if you look at most bottles, they'll have a breakdown of the actual amount of milligrams per milliliter. Now, just any dropper, most bottles are about a 30 milliliter bottle. They have a 1 milliliter dropper. And so you could look at that and you could say, okay, on the bottle it says, for instance, 16.6 milligrams per milliliter. Well, you have to look at that number and say how many milligrams per milliliter, so you have an idea of the dosing, which is standard in any dosing. Just go ahead and look at the bottle. Please read the instructions. And from that point, you can go ahead and say, all right, go on our website, or any credible company is going to have a website dosing calculator. So, for instance, you can go to sourcecbdhemp.com, and we have a dosing calculator there. And that dosing calculator, you type in your body weight, you type in your pet's body weight, your horse's body weight. There's many, as we work with many, your tiger's body weight, we go ahead and
if you live in Oklahoma or Florida, you can
Joe the Tiger, or if you
exactly.
But with that being said, you type in your body weight, it'll give you the amount of milligrams you should be taking, a range. Basically, if you don't have that, take your body weight and multiply it times 0.1 or 0.2. And that'll give you the idea. You say at least 0.1. So if you're 100 pounds, you're looking at, maybe 10 milligrams. Okay, 0.1. And that'll give you the idea of where you want to be at for your own body weight. So just go ahead and take that multiply. Wait, I didn't do that multiplication correctly. There we go. Yep, so yeah, just take that multiplication of 0.1 to 0.2 and just multiply it times the body weight. And that'll give you a good sense of where you really need to be at for your body weight on a daily basis. And you can take that, as it says, typically, you can double that. I think everybody has a sweet spot. We're all very unique. We all have different issues. So, finding your own little sweet spot with what works best for you. And I think that would be very typical of any dosing instructions, give you the confidence you need. But yeah, just go to the website, type in your body weight, and you'll be good.
Well, yeah, we have a dosage calculator in the website, and I believe Emily just shared it in the chat box. Next question. When using Balm, do you need to use every day, or can you use as needed?
Well, if you're using a balm, if you're using that for a skin issue, for a skin support issue, eczema, psoriasis, those are huge issues that you can use it for, to kind of coat, to seal that area and to work to support those cells in that localized area. So if that's an issue you're having, that's something that you probably want to go ahead and regularly do to really support those areas, maybe 3 times a day. And same thing with an arthritis or a pain issue. If you have an elbow, knee issue, something like that, it's something that you're predominantly going to be putting on probably throughout the day, in the morning, and then later on in the day, and then in the evening. Just as you would to kind of keep it, to keep that area loosened. Obviously, you go to sleep and the next day put it on. And then we start to see, as the mobility increases and as it starts to relieve that inflammation, you typically don't have to go as hard on the usage of it. But it is important to really keep the affected area covered through that period of time that you're really looking to get some benefits from it. Then when you really start to kind of see the benefits, then you can judge it and say, am I really using too much of this?
Yeah.
Or I mean, just like anything, Great question. Thank you.
And also, if you're in a pinch and you haven't any balm at home, we did do for Father's Day, I believe we did a homemade CBD balm recipe, and then you can see me making an absolute mess in my kitchen making it. And yeah, it's good in a pinch. Don't do it regularly. Please don't put yourself through that. But yeah, there's easier options. And with that being just a few minutes past the hour, I think we're going to start wrapping up. Before we leave, there are a couple of things that I'd like to remind everyone that's attended. Well, first off, thank you so much for joining us. We've been so excited to do our first live event with Source, and definitely, like Ian mentioned, we are going to keep them going, and we're going to bring you more and more experts to share different topics, different perspectives about CBD. At the same time, for the Mount Hope Foods community, because we promised that this event was for you, we have a 10% coupon that you can use on our website. Use the discount code #MountHope. And also, we sent out to your email a little coupon that you can print out. And if I'm understanding correctly, you can bring it to Mount Hope Foods and you will get a 10% discount on any
show it on your phone. Yeah, show it on your phone. Bring it in if you don't have to print it out.
Print it? What is it, 1986? I'm sorry that my mind.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, but, I'm sorry. I'm still catching up.
No, perfect. Yes, and or you can just say that you attended the talk. Go ahead and see any of the nice folks in there at Mount Hope.
Or you can just fax it to the store too.
Send a Western Union money.
Yeah, exactly. So all those options are available.
If the store, you get your discount, everybody. Thank you so much.
We really, really appreciate that you joined us. Thank you so much, Emily, for helping us out with the Q&A box and the chat. Thanks so much, Ian, for being with us. And please, if you need any more information about CBD, make sure that you go to our website, sourcecbdhemp.com. We have a very big library of information there in our blog. We make sure that we are constantly adding more and more and more information so that you know exactly how to use the products and exactly fix those problems that you are very much working hard to fix. So thank you so much. We cannot wait to see you next time. And until then, be good and take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.